Today's report from the Inspector General showed just how far Donald Trump's last administration went in targeting his perceived enemies. And with his picks for the next administration, Donald Trump is assembling a whole new crew of people willing to do whatever he wants. Senator Chris Murphy is a Democrat of Connecticut. He joins me now. Senator, it's great to see you again. Let me just get your thoughts on the news that we learned today about the Trump Justice Department, the previous one, secretly obtaining phone and text messages of 43 congressional staffers, 2 members of Congress, reporters. I mean, what do you make of this blatant weaponization of the Justice Department?
Yeah, it's an extraordinary story. I mean, this is positively Orwellian. Trump was going after the phone records of members of Congress, staff, Republicans, and Democrats, and then going to extraordinary lengths to try to hide it from public view, burying the records request. Only now are we finding out the true extent of, his attempt to try to target his political enemies and members of a protected branch of government. And I think it just shows you what we're in store for. Since then, he has made no secret of the fact that if he's elected, which he was, he is going to view his political opposition as the #1 threat to the nation's security. Of course, his opposition isn't a threat to the country, but it might be a threat to him. And having done it once, and now having installed a whole bunch of stooges in the Department of Justice and the FBI, I think you're likely to see a lot more of this really over-the-top targeting of his political enemies.
Yeah, what does that look like? I mean, this probe was far broader than previously known. We're learning about it only almost 4 years after the fact. If this is what Trump was willing to sign off back then when we believed there were adults in the room like the Bill Barrs or the Jeff Sessions, what do you anticipate a more emboldened, more aggrieved Trump might do? Are there any preparations in place to prevent something like this from happening again?
Well, listen, we can't completely imagine what he will do, but Kash Patel, who is his nominee to head the FBI, has made it very clear that he is going to prosecute and persecute anyone who he believes has stood in the way of Donald Trump's political agenda. One of the things he says he will do is prosecute people who tried to uphold Joe Biden's win in 2020. In other words, if you didn't try to rig the election for Donald Trump, you may soon be investigated by the FBI and perhaps prosecuted by the Department of Justice. That's how serious this can be. Now, we could hope that an independent judiciary would back us up, but there are a whole bunch of Trump sycophants that were put on the bench by President Trump during his first term who may not rule in favor of the Constitution and an individual's right to free speech. So I think this is a really scary moment, but we have the power to fight back against Kash Patel's nomination, to fight back against Pam Bondi's nomination, to expose for the American public what they are going to do if these people who are loyal to Donald Trump, not the rule of law, get into office. So people still have power right now, because if we expose them ahead of time, if we make it very clear what they're going to do, it'll make it a little bit harder for them to get away with it.
And speaking of exposing people and certainly double standards and hypocrisy, let me turn to another pick ahead of Senate confirmation hearings. That is former Fox host Pete Hegseth, who is up for a very important position, defense secretary. He's been dealing with the repercussions of sexual assault allegations, unpopular opinions about the military. Watch this.
I'm straight up just saying we should not have women in combat roles. It hasn't made us more effective, hasn't made us more lethal, has made fighting more complicated. Our institutions don't have to incentivize that in places where not traditionally, over human history, men in those positions are more capable.
I also want an opportunity here to clarify comments that have been misconstrued that I somehow don't support women in the military. Some of our greatest warriors, our best warriors out there are women.
So he's either lying to the American people when he was a host, or he's lying to them now as a nominee. I'm just curious your thoughts on this. How are those lies interpreted by the Senate during the confirmation process?
Well, it speaks to, a broader trend in these picks. President Trump is, picking TV personalities, people that he watches on TV, excuse me, who are primarily showmen. And what you're seeing is that the act that exists on TV may or may not be true. There may be some things that Pete Hegseth or Dr. Oz say on TV that they believe. There may be other things that they say simply because it thinks that it will get them ratings. I mean, the bigger problem with Hegseth is this extraordinary litany of abuses against women with alcohol. You combine that with a complete sort of lack of experience in running a bureaucracy this big, combined with backwards views about women in combat, about the role of Muslims in society. And it just seems like a recipe for disaster. I mean, I just think it's extraordinary that there aren't going to be 2 or 3 or 4 Republicans who will go to President-elect Trump and say there has got to be somebody else without this history of abuse, without these backwards misogynist views, that could be the Secretary of Defense. And if there aren't 3 or 4 Republicans who are willing to stand up to somebody like Hegseth, then it just shows you that that party is truly a cult of personality, and that Donald Trump has total command and control over every single Republican senator and congressman.
All right, Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut. Senator, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Senator, welcome to confirmation season, which is the big job distinction between your time in the House and your time in the Senate. When you were on the Senate floor for your swearing in, was that your first time on the Senate floor?
I had been there a couple times, first on an impeachment of a federal judge, and then for the first impeachment of President Trump. And
House members technically have floor rights. They can walk onto the Senate floor whenever they want. It doesn't happen very often.
It doesn't happen very often. And I think apart from those 2 impeachment trials, I had not been on the Senate floor.
Yeah. I want to go to that point Benny Thompson was just addressing, this notion of, first of all, the crazy talk of Donald Trump about jail with January 6th committee members, to me, is utter nonsense. There's no judicial process or criminal process that can be applied to any members. But this question of pardons by President Biden for members of the January 6th committee.
Well, first of all, in terms of what Trump is saying, I think he has a couple intentions here. He obviously wants to try to intimidate members of the January 6th committee and others who held him accountable. We did our oversight, as Chairman Thompson was saying, perfectly appropriate and more than appropriate, necessary. But he also wants to send a message to others in the future. Don't hold me accountable. Don't try to hold me accountable, because if you do, I will jail you, or I will sic my Justice Department on you, or my FBI director on you. So he also wants to discourage any accountability in the future. This is not, I think, what people were voting for. Crime was an issue, but in California, it's smash and grab robberies, it's violent crime, it's someone gunning down a healthcare executive. It's not political retribution. In terms of President Biden, I don't think pardons are necessary. Those of us on the committee are very proud of what we did. We feel it was an important public service. What made those hearings we held so powerful is that almost all the witnesses were Republicans. Is he going to jail all these Republicans, including his own attorney general? So we're proud of our work. And, I don't like the precedent of outgoing presidents then pardoning their administration or their fellow party members. The president will decide what he decides, but I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah, it isn't. But so there's a lot of mythology around presidential powers as exercised by Donald Trump. For example, the notion that the president can jail someone. The president can't jail anyone. When he was interviewed on the weekend about tariffs, and the follow-up question was, would he punish business executives who raised prices after their goods were hit with tariffs? The notion that the president can punish a business executive or anyone for anything is fiction. There is no punishment that belongs in that the president of the United States has in his hands.
I think that's certainly true in terms of the criminal law. He can't simply say this businessman said something I didn't like or did something I didn't like. But there are other ways, obviously, he can reward or potentially economically punish a business. He could charge the Justice Department to investigate them or withhold support for a merger or potentially, in the case of Elon Musk and others, award contracts, lucrative contracts to them, or deny them lucrative contracts. So he can economically reward or potentially punish, but his threats to go after executives, prosecute them somehow, that's nonsense. He may be able to harass them through use of this abuse of the Justice Department, but we still have a court system, a functioning court system. I hope and pray we continue to have that, which protects our civil liberties and rights.
Well, every tariff Donald Trump introduces is going to raise prices, and nothing's going to happen to anyone working at the companies where those prices go up. Confirmations. You're already voting on confirmations as a new member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, where the Democrats are still moving Biden appointees for federal judgeships for confirmation.
We are. And, I think those appointments are enormously important to restore balance on the courts at really every level of the court. Most of the nominations that are moving forward right now are district court judges. I wish more of the Court of Appeals judges were getting confirmed. But the Senate, Leader Schumer, Chairman Durbin, have a pretty impressive record of moving through these confirmations, particularly the district court, and want to see that continue right up until the last day.
On November 5th, a majority of voters elected a billionaire under the guise of populism. It's fair to say that Americans' wealthiest individuals secured the most powerful positions and have effectively won the battle for the 21st century. They are set to usher in the most unregulated, pro-corporation era since the Gilded Age. Trump won in large part because of another billionaire, Elon Musk, who turned a social media platform into a right-wing juggernaut of lies and disinformation. While Musk was taking over social media, Leonard Leo celebrated the Federalist Society's takeover of the American judicial system, with his 6 hand-selected Supreme Court justices serving as his crowning jewels. Those justices are delivering victory after victory for large corporations, backed by other billionaires like Charles Koch, who helped gut federal regulations, leaving Americans prey to pollution, financial abuse, and gun violence. The super rich at this point are so powerful. They will make up the majority of this upcoming administration. And they are touting a mandate to cut taxes for themselves while attacking things that protect the rest of us, such as unions, public education, and health care. Joining me now is a senator really intending to stand in the way, Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts. Senator, it's so good to see you.
It's so good to be here with you.
Is it too dark to say that the billionaires ultimately won?
I'm not going to give them one yet. I think they certainly are in the winning position. I think they got a ton of power. But you got to remember, there's a lot that still goes on down in the gears. So just today, we actually had a victory. Let's stop and do a smile for a minute. These don't come so often. So you know how there are all these grocery stores out there, and the whole idea is they will compete with each other and keep the prices low. We've known for a long time. In fact, there are only 2.
Yeah.
I get that there are a lot of names. There's, there's Shaw's and there's Star and there's Ralph's and there's Vons and They're just 2 companies that own the 2.
All of them.
And the 2 said, let's merge, right? What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah.
Yes, we will be a unit company and not have to do nasty things like compete with each other on prices in these different markets. The FTC took them to court, said, no, you can't do that. And today, this very day, the FTC won. Go Lina Khan.
Okay.
Go forces that say we're going to keep some competition in this economy. I celebrate that partly to remind everybody why it matters, because blocking that merger means at least we still have some competition.
Yeah.
And that's really important. And also to remind you, it is possible to do it. And these regulatory agencies already have law. We don't have to pass new laws. We just have to get people into those places who have the courage. FTC has shown they can do it. Let's keep supporting them.
We've been talking a lot about this Luigi Mangione, the case about the United Healthcare CEO. People are very angry at United Healthcare, I think for good reason, denying care and the whole system. And we were just talking in the previous block, killing a CEO is not the way you change. You have to regulate them, right? And so we've got attempts to try to rein in some of these big businesses. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which was your creation. The Trump administration wants to get rid of it. That is like protecting people from credit card fraud.
Yeah.
What happens if that goes away?
So look, terrible for individuals, but stop and think overall about the social contract. Part of the deal in how we've kept this democracy, this economy, this country on a fairly steady path for more than 200 years has been that those at the top pay a little more in taxes, are a little less rich than they otherwise might be, and everybody else at least gets a chance.
Yeah.
And what happens when you turn this into the billionaires run it all is they get the opportunity to squeeze every last penny.
Yeah.
And look, we'll say it over and over. Violence is never the answer. This guy gets a trial who's allegedly killed the CEO of United Health. But you can only push people so far. And then they start to take matters into their own hands.
Yeah.
We need regulation in part to rein those guys in. And you know where this is coming big time ahead of us is on taxes.
Yeah.
That the big boys, just like you said, their plan is to rush through this tax plan right at the beginning of 2025, give themselves a bunch more tax breaks, and then put the real burden of running this country on ordinary, hard-working
that will pay the tariff.
families.
That will pay the tariff. They're going to pay,
They can
and
pay
it's
for it
paying
in
at the
tariffs.
bottom.
They can pay for it in taxes.
Absolutely.
But the whole point is shove the cost somewhere else
onto the poorer people
One
and make
more
them
way
subsidize
for
the rich.
billionaires to pick the pockets.
One of the billionaires, Dr. Oz, I don't know if he's a billionaire or not, but he's very rich. He owns a lot of United Healthcare the stock, and he is about to be able to be in charge of Medicare itself. And there is a lot of fear that his first step will be to try to privatize it and make Medicare Advantage everyone's health plan.
So think about what that means. Dr. Oz owns more than $500,000 in stock in the private version of Medicare. If the public version of Medicare, the one that everybody counts on, collapses, then Dr. Oz gets richer. And that is why Dr. Oz cannot have the job of being in charge of Medicare. He makes money if Medicare fails. And that kind of conflict right at the heart of running a system that protects every senior in this country.
Yeah.
That is fundamentally wrong, and we got to put a stop.
So this is the reason that I started out the way I did, because you've got Elon Musk, who has billions and billions in government contracts, now having a say in who gets government contracts.
Exactly.
He could say Starlink gets everything, NASA goes away, I get richer. Ramaswamy, who's gotten federal subsidies for his drug companies, can now be in charge of saying, you know what I think is not waste, fraud, and abuse? My stuff. The things that I get. You know,
only those other guys.
Only the other guys. All the crypto people that are now, and there's a senator, there's a crypto guy who beat Sherrod Brown.
Right.
He's now like, line it up. I can like weigh in on legislation that makes crypto king, and now I get money. People are flying down to Doral to do their Republican retreat to pay Donald Trump so that he gets money. It's literally just rich people sharing money among themselves. Where do regular people, even Trump voters, fit into that?
You know, that's the thing. The Trump voters don't fit in here at all. Ordinary folks don't fit in here at all. So where this one, I think, is going to start to hit is when all those promises that Donald Trump made, remember how he promised that he's going to cut credit card interest rates down to 10%?
No tax on tips. He
Let's see
promised
it.
that.
No tax on tips, right? No tax on Social Security.
That's what he said.
Bring it on.
Yeah.
Because one of two things is going to happen. Either he's going to deliver on those promises, which means he's going to have the courage to stand up to those billionaires, or he's just pitching in with the billionaires and he's going to say to all of those people who counted on him, all those people who voted, nope, you don't really matter.
Yeah.
But the point is, it's all framed up now. It's no longer, oh, we're in the campaign and he can promise this to this group and that to that group. And there were a lot of us, you included, who kept saying, but wait a minute, you can't do both of those things at the same time. We are now coming to the part of the world where you literally can't do both of those things at the same time.
Right.
And Trump is going to have to make a choice.
Yeah.
And he's either going to deliver on some of those promises for people, or he's just handing this whole thing over to the billionaires in return for a nice price.
The record ain't good. He promised steel jobs would never go away. They went away. There was a decrease in manufacturing jobs. He did not do well in terms of creating jobs. He's made a lot of promises now. There are some people in the U.S. steel unions that are upset that he seems to be against Nippon Steel taking over U.S. Steel. But then you had some who literally spoke at Trump rallies that said, we wanted the takeover because we want the jobs. It's like he can't please both parts of his base. If veterans' benefits get cut, which is on Ramaswamy's list, he's got to answer to veterans who overwhelmingly supported him.
Oh, yeah. Oh, listen, when you talk about who he has to answer to, remember, more than 70% of America, and that includes Democrats, Republicans, Independents, want to see the rich pay listen for the word, more in taxes. Not less, not the same, more in taxes. So the big question is for Donald Trump, who are you out there for? Who are you going to deliver for? But here's the one for me, and I think for all the rest of us, is to say, if you don't deliver for people the way you promised, then our job is to make sure you're held accountable. Our job is to wrap that around your neck and make you wear it every single day.
This is why we love to talk with Senator Elizabeth Warren, because she makes it plain, makes it simple, and lets you understand what's happening. Senator Elizabeth Warren, thank you so much. Always appreciate you.
It was suggested that it was your dad's wish that Kendall take over as CEO.
Oh, so he underlined recently?
Underlined or crossed out?
Shiv.
Oh, no. I'm not saying for or against. I'm just, as a matter of fact, it's...
Are you serious?
I mean, it's kind of...
Okay, let me see the thing.
It's underlined or crossed out. It doesn't really matter because it's legally, it's the board, who will choose.
How good was Succession? I miss it. For all you Succession fans, it was a big sort of plot axis, right? A big debate as the three siblings fought each other to take control of their father's company when he died. Was Kendall Roy's name underlined or crossed out? We show you that clip because it's better than anything in the actual news, but also it is connected to new reporting in the New York Times. And it sounds like the world of Succession is now playing out in real life. Rupert Murdoch, the patriarch of the family the show was partly, loosely based on, is trying to secure the future of his empire, which includes Fox News, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Post, and major newspapers and television outlets in Australia and Britain. The Times reports this, quote, a Nevada commissioner ruled resoundingly against Rupert Murdoch's attempt to change his family's trust, to consolidate his eldest son Lachlan's control of his media empire and lock in Fox News's right-wing editorial slant. That's according to a sealed court document obtained by the New York Times. The commissioner, Edmund Gorman Jr., concluded in a decision filed on Saturday that the father and son, who is the head of Fox News and News Corp, had acted in, quote, bad faith in their effort to amend their irrecoverable trust, which divides the control of the company equally among Murdoch's four oldest children, Lachlan, James, Elizabeth, and Prudence, after his death. The Times reports that this effort was made not for money reasons, but for editorial reasons. Quote, Murdoch, now 93, has long intended to bequeath these sprawling media conglomerates to his children, but he is also determined to preserve the right-wing bent of his empire, and reconciling these two desires has become a growing challenge for him. James and Elizabeth are both known to have less conservative political views than their father or brother. If Murdoch fails to lock in Lachlan's leadership of the company, he will be unable to ensure that Fox News will remain a right-wing news outlet after his death, putting in jeopardy the legacy of the conservative empire he has spent his life building. Fox News, which was founded in 1996, has changed the media landscape as the preeminent right-wing television network and has held an outsized impact on the actions of our government, especially with Donald Trump atop the Republican Party and heading back to the White House. Demonstrating that point, so far nearly a dozen of Trump's new staff picks for his second term are Fox News hosts or contributors. Joining our conversation, President of Media Matters for America, Angelo Carusone, is back. David's here as well. Angelo, just in your view, what matters most about this story?
I think what matters most is the timing here. And the timing doesn't just overlap with that Succession episode, which is really important because that then led to James and Elizabeth beginning to have some planning and discussion meetings about what happens in the event of their father's death, which partly led Rupert Murdoch to think about, oh, wait a minute, they may try to replace Lachlan. But something else happened in that period in 2023 as well, and that's that all of the revelations from the Dominion lawsuit against Fox News also came to light. And what the public got was a clear view of what was happening inside Fox News right in the lead up to and in the aftermath of the 2020 election, and just how deep Fox was in terms of helping Trump, undermine the election integrity, to lie about it, that they knew the things they were saying about the election being stolen was a total lie, yet they continued to push it over and over and over again, even at the highest levels. And so if you're Rupert Murdoch, one of the things that happens when you sort of begin the process of hey, let's change the trust so that they don't boot out Lachlan, is that you got a perspective on just how important Fox News was. Without Fox News, much of what took place in 2020, including January 6th, wouldn't have been able to happen because Fox News really helped build the scaffolding. They very much validated all the lies that Donald Trump told. Even Rupert Murdoch said it, that Fox was the only entity that could have prevented January 6th by telling the truth. He even thought about it 2 days beforehand and then ultimately decided against issuing a directive to his on-air talent to actually get out there and tell the truth about the election. So to me, that's the part that's really significant here, is that it's not some academic experiment or the family drama is obviously fascinating and intriguing. It's that we got a real live example and illustration of Fox's destructive power in practice. And now, given the fact that Trump is back in the White House and the Rupert Murdoch's attempt to sort of just reinforce and entrench Lachlan's sort of future there, I think it shows you all you need to know about what Fox News has been, but more importantly, where it's going. And now we have a chance to change that, obviously, potentially. But I think that, to me, is the one part of the story publicly when I've seen the reporting that's been missing, is that the catalyst was, they started discussing it because of what was happening in the media at the time around the Dominion filings.
Yeah. I will always think, David Jolly, that the Dominion filing gave us a word used for Donald Trump that I'd never heard before in covering him since 2014, and that was demonic, used to describe him by none other than Tucker Carlson, a, quote, demonic force. Your thoughts about this new reporting?
Nicole, fresh off the November election, we're talking autopsies. What did Democrats do wrong? I think the greatest challenge for Democrats going forward is not necessarily a Republican candidate. They don't have good ones. Donald Trump was a bad candidate. He's a convicted criminal who brags about sexual assault and has offered the opportunity to topple democracy. The greatest challenge for Democrats is not their own candidates. They have a remarkable bench, incredible candidates. I think the greatest challenge for Democrats right now is Fox News. It's the Fox News enterprise and the Fox News environment, which, as Angelo said, without Rupert Murdoch's machine, January 6th may not have happened. Without what we learned in the Dominion settlement and Smartmatic, maybe evidence would not have come to light about the falsehood they lay in front of the American people. And it is clear, whether it's wrapped in, the tendencies towards white nationalist stories or migrant caravans or just defining Joe Biden for 4 years as the Biden crime family, the successful effort by Fox News to stoke division and to stoke anxiety and to stoke anger is real. And it may be more powerful than a Republican or Democratic force. And Democrats have to figure out a way to tackle this. This is an enormous challenge. I just had lunch with a former elected local official, been in politics for 40 years, old school kind of politician, just fix roads and deal with local issues. And she told me, for the last 2 years, everyone who would come before the commission was angry. They were mad. And they didn't know what they were angry about, but they were angry Republicans who felt like they were not heard. This is the strategy of Fox News. It's a great challenge for Democrats going forward.
I need to sneak in a break. I want to keep both of you over because I learned on campaigns that the only way to beat an opponent is to respect an opponent. And I really think this is a moment where the only way to outfox Fox is to respect what Fox has built. And what Fox has built is so much more than the scaffolding for Trumpism. It is the cultural sort of toehold in which Kyle Rittenhouse is good, Daniel Penny is a hero. It is everything. Immigrants are ruining your life. They're all criminal. I mean, it is a worldview that has completely replaced sort of church and state and political party and probably everything except sports teams. And the only way in an electoral context to defeat that is to respect it, learn from it, and then build something bigger and better and rooted in truth and democratic ideals. I want
Joining us now, friend and former roommate of Luigi Mangione, R.J. Martin. R.J., you lived with, first off, thank you for being with us. I know it's difficult to come on and have to talk about something like this, but you lived with Luigi, in Hawaii. Can you tell us a little bit about the guy that you knew?
Yes, so I founded a co-living space called Surf Break Co-Living, and Luigi applied to be a member. And we do an interview process. We do full background checks. And I was fortunate enough to interview him. And from, the initial conversation, he was a great fit for our community, thoughtful individual, has a great job, was looking to come to Hawaii to give back, to stay healthy, to make new friends. He really was an ideal member for our community at Surf Break. And he continued on. He did great things when he was with us. He helped spearhead a book club. He was great to other members. He was always giving and considerate and thoughtful. I remember cooking meals with him and joking around, had a great sense of humor. We bonded over working out, over the intellectual conversations we had at book club, and the thoughtful, young man that I got to know. It seems completely incompatible with an assassin.
You've talked about the back surgery that he had, the back pain that he had. Did he ever express any anger toward the healthcare industry? Anything that would seem resonant to you now that all of this is unfolding?
No, he was one of the most positive people I know. He was always a cup half full kind of person, the kind of person that people enjoyed spending time with. I always look forward to our hangouts. We had intellectual conversations about structural problems that the nation faces, whether they're governmental or corporate, but nothing stands out specifically regarding.
Well, tell me about the structural and corporate issues that you guys would talk about. What were those like, those conversations?
Well, the counterculture that America had in the 1960s made it really clear that we're on a course of action that's destroying the planet. For the present gain, for future loss. And I think that conversation and that data and that information has only become more clear and more loud as time goes on. So those would be things we talk about, or perhaps how governmental institutions are failing our citizens, whether it is, education or healthcare or wars that we wage. These are intellectual conversations that, we enjoyed having, whether it was over a meal or at the park during sunset, as we collaborated and had, great talks at our book club.
Regarding the book club, what's the deal with the reading of Ted Kaczynski's book? How did that come to be?
Every week it rotated who got to pick the next reading, or, every 2 weeks, however long it took us to get through something. And another member and I kind of half jokingly proposed it. I kind of always wanted to read it, but never had the motivation. And I figured, well, if we'd have to read it for book club, I'll have to get through it. So it was actually my idea and another member's idea. It wasn't anything Luigi was inspired to dig into.
It is interesting, having read the Goodreads review of it and seeing what's going on right now. Obviously, he's just a suspect and no one's been convicted. But seeing the totality of what we've been able to understand about him online, including the 3-page document that police have given us a few details about, including anger toward the healthcare system and United specifically. I just wonder, now that you're looking back and you're putting these pieces together as we are, if there's anything does this still surprise you? Are you taken aback? Do you think something might have happened in the time between you last saw him and this?
Well, he was absolutely a kind person, not violent, never wanted to even watch, violent sports or talk about guns even, never once popped up in conversation. So it's beyond surprising that, the Luigi that I knew is completely incompatible with an assassin.
You say that, I read that you said that you lost contact with him. He left Hawaii, got back surgery. He told you there was a story about it. He wanted to tell you in person, but you never had that in-person conversation. How long? When was the last time you guys were able to connect?
That was earlier this year, maybe March-ish, when we had our last text communications. I followed up with him in the next 3 months in a row, just kind of like, hey, what's up, bro? And didn't hear back from him. Our friendship was such that I didn't assume anything. I didn't take it the wrong way. I just knew that, when we did reconnect, our friendship would start from where it left off, and just assume that maybe he'd gotten a new job, moved back home. But I had absolutely zero thought or inclination that something had happened to him.
RJ Martin, thank you very much for joining us. I know, again, it's a difficult time, and it's got to be really confusing to try to reconcile the person you said you knew and the person that we're all starting to learn about and what may have unfolded over the past few days. RJ, thank you again.